All right.
Right. Go ahead, Tina.
All right. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us right before the holidays. We are focusing today with our Conspectus Cloud webinar on asset management. And our presenter today is Steve Gantner. He is our Executive Vice President out of St. Louis, Missouri. I am Tina Montone. I am the industry liaison. I'm out of Pennsylvania on the eastern side, good old Orfield, PA. So we are going to take you through how to manage your assets in documentation, specifically UNIFORMAT, or is what we like to call SPD, System and Performance Descriptions. So you want to take us through here, Steve?
Yep.
All right. So when we talk about specifications or documenting for asset management, we are referring to UNIFORMAT. How many of you, by show of hands, if you could raise your hand, are familiar with UNIFORMAT? Okay, so we have 3 folks. Excellent. So let's take a quick look at what UNIFORMAT is. You may already know this, but coming from Steve, who is one of our senior specifiers, let's dig in a little bit more. So Steve, how does UNIFORMAT organize information? What is its standardized structure? How is it applied and when? And what is its presence in the industry?
Sure. First of all, UNIFORMAT's organized by functional hierarchy. It uses building information by assembly or systems. We're going to talk about. In this instance, today we're going to talk about water pumps, just as an example. But it's instead of doing it based around products or materials itself, it makes it easier to analyze and evaluate other possibilities. It provides a standardized structure. Systems divided into hierarchical levels. We'll get into those in a few minutes. We're talking about level 1 is the major functional category. Think of it as an element of the building. And it's based on how you build the building from the bottom up, outside in. So we're talking vertical construction today. UNIFORMAT can also be used for horizontal construction, although we specialize in the vertical element. The application across it has many applications, but basically what it's based upon is cost cutting, or not cost cutting. I'm sorry, I said the bad word. Cost estimating. That's what I meant to say. That's the early conceptual and design uses. But it also documents decisions. And what we like to promote it for is recording decisions early in the project. And we like to get off at the concept phase, really kind of have this document developed before proverbial pencil hits paper. I know it's electrons now, but when I started, it was paper and pencil. As far as industry adoption, UNIFORMAT, the capitalized UNIFORMAT is maintained by ASTM. There are 2 versions, ASTM's version and CSI's version. CSI UNIFORMAT is similar from elements A through, we'll find out here in a minute, G. And then CSI added element 0 and Z. So just a little bit of what it is that we've done here. Well, we call it a systems and performance description when we do it. And what we do is we base it on, like I said, both UNIFORMAT. Introduction element, I'm called level 1 is in the element, is your project descriptions, requirements for contracting and procurement, things like that. Then you move into the building itself. So like I said, we're starting from the bottom up, outside in. So we're going to go from substructure to the shell of the building, which would be all 6 sides. And then we're going to move to the interiors and finish out the building. Element D itself is for services. So that's where we're going to talk about your pumps and HVAC equipment, electrical, plumbing, all that other good stuff. And then E is for furnishing the building and equipment that typically doesn't fall under the other ones. Special construction and demolition, if you have rooms that or process equipment that you need to put in there, this is where you typically put that information. And then finally, like we do with MASTERFORMAT specifications, the site work itself falls at the end. Think of it from a landscaping perspective. And then element Z that was added by CSI helps tie everything together. You can do some of your programming information in there. You do your code research, document portions of the building that are vital to operations. So we further break it down. Levels 2 through 4 are more detailed. And for example, here we're showing the shell as B, element B. B20 is the exterior wall. And as you can see, it's getting refined as we move down. So B2010 would be your wall construction. B2020 would be windows. And here's an example of how we would do it in section system performance description. And in our software, we have a checklist where you can go through and add whichever elements you need. And we have the major top 3 elements and their subcategories. When you get into the individual ones, we'll show you a little bit later how you can break out and customize this to fit your own project needs.
So let's review the high-level points of the benefits that UNIFORMAT provides.
Okay. I think the key one in the first sentence is all stakeholders. And when we say all stakeholders, we would encourage everyone involved in the process. And that is everyone from the owner through the AEs, the contractors, the subcontractors, anyone you can bring on board early enough to help you make an informed decision about the project. The key here is informed decision, because what we want to do is we want to analyze the cost. We want to make sure that what we're putting in this document can be, first of all, purchased for an appropriate price and then maintained for an appropriate price. We want to have our decision-making finalized at this point. I'm sorry, I didn't say finalized. We would like to have important decisions documented and, if possible, purchase them ahead of time so you can do some prefabrication work if necessary. But you could also, this prevents value engineering towards the end. I said cost cutting accidentally earlier. That's the bad word. We don't like cost cutting, because really what cost cutting is really just making the inferior design, because you got to lose some program somewhere. But the decision making also allows for improved evaluation of design. And finally, one of the components we like about UNIFORMAT is it's integration. We had integration. I changed the word from integration to works, because I don't want to mislead people. I don't think there's anything out there right now that integrates well with BIM. I know it's been tried by a couple of other platforms, but that integration with BIM requires coordination on multiple parties that just isn't quite happening yet. Eventually in the future, hopefully. But you have to have the Revit modeler and the person doing this document working hand in hand, and that doesn't always work. So it works with BIM, and it will support the model itself when you're getting into it.
Okay, so every member of the project team benefits, from the owner to the design team to pre-construction to the general contractor, construction manager, and the tradespeople. One particular stakeholder who can provide and receive tremendous value is the operations and maintenance team. When would O&M get involved, and why?
So like I said a minute ago, operations and maintenance should ideally be involved from the very beginning concept. When you're an owner and you're developing your budget, your concept, you should be talking to your facilities folks. At least we firmly believe that, because they're the ones that are going to be maintaining the facility, whether it's 20-year expected lives of the building or 100-year or further. But they can also help you set clear guidelines for what and how you're picking your materials or your assemblies. They can also provide you valuable input on, if they maintain it properly, what the expected life of it could be. They can help you with detailed descriptions and what they're going to need to maintain it. Maybe it's something that is so hard that you need to consider hiring another person in your maintenance staff to do some of that work. You never know. But they also important in providing performance requirements for you.
All right, so let's take a look at the 8 points of interest from the owner's perspective, and then we'll take a deep dive into each of them, showing how Conspectus Cloud can support each area. So Steve, you want to give a high level view right here?
Well, I don't like to read slides. We're going to go through all this in just a minute. But we're going to show you a little bit more detail how we can do that within the software framework that we have, and potentially you could use with UNIFORMAT as well. But on the standardization and consistency, what we're looking for here is making sure that we're tracking it, buying it, installing it, and maintaining it in a proper way and consistently. And you want to ensure that everything meets the same quality and safety requirements that you have and have set for the project. So you want to document that early on. This is an example of one of our systems, and I mentioned the chilled water pump. This assembly, you set your criteria for the chilled water system in the table above, and that sets the criteria. That's your performance requirements, and we'll transfer those a little bit later. But this is for the overall chilled water system. Now we're going to dive a little bit deeper, and we're going to talk about the pump assembly to supply that chilled water. So what we're doing here is we're naming it with a custom name, and you'll see D3040. The D is the services and equipment side, and the 30 is the identification on the plumbing side, or the HVAC side, and the 40 is a further denomination coming, or number further defining the unit. And then the .CWSP is a custom number that can be applied to that system. And I'll explain that a little bit more about that in a minute.
So is information, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm trying to tee up here. As information is known, the documentation, as you can see, is populated. So how is maintenance brought to the front of the conversation? And then how can it be documented?
Okay, so maintenance has the important task of obviously maintaining it. Captain Obvious here. But they can develop their maintenance schedules off of it. They can tell you the estimated life expectancy of it. They can modify or monitor the progress of the equipment and measure it against the performance requirements that were outlined earlier on. As an example, what we're doing here, we talked about performance requirements a minute ago. We could put in the performance requirements here, and we also have design requirements. And we'll identify this early on. Maintenance can help aid in the descriptions here so that we're getting consistent equipment. The numbering system that I mentioned earlier, the customizable number, and let me see if I can point to it up here. This would describe this entire assembly, but this number can be further refined down to add more information. For instance, you could say dash, let's see, SA for skid assembly, if you want to further define the skid assembly, and you can track that throughout. So ideally, we would get all parties, all stakeholders involved to buy off on the numbering and naming of the assemblies. Because if you get down to the nitty-gritty of it, you can have individual parts and components of this pump assembly with different names for the different component within that assembly. And you can track that on the drawings with the same name and number. You can track it on purchase orders. You can track it through the actual specifications. You can track it through commissioning, manufacturing. You want them to include that number on everything so that there's a consistent trail and a record of what was done, when it was done, and why it was done.
Yep, all the way through to when you have the maintenance folks using it.
Yes. Yes.
So life cycle cost must be considered as the project is designed. Where is this documented, and what tools aid in managing this information as the documents are built out?
I struggled with this one a little bit. And really what we're looking at is, oops, went too far ahead. Where are we?
Life cycle management.
Thank you.
I don't know if I'm not going to let you steer anymore.
No, don't let me steer anymore. That's what happens when you're getting sick. So the clear documents themselves help help asset managers identify the long-term performance of the equipment. They can help you, for instance, identify expected lifespan of that equipment, that pump. How long will that pump last? How long do certain parts of that pump last with those further numbering systems? Are there rubber seals on it? Are there stainless steel brackets, or I think Dave was mentioning brass brackets or valves? And whether or not those will be needed replaced early, later, midway, however long. But you can identify that. And then you can base that on performance matrix and manufacturer's recommendations to make sure that you're maintaining it properly and in a timely manner.
Okay,
So
yep. So as the decisions are made, then we can begin to discuss what the performance expectations are. And the benchmarks can be established, which will provide analysis and aid in decisions. So what does that look like when you start to put these benchmarks in place?
Right. So when we talked about performance requirements, one of the key performance requirements that you might want to have included is you had set, let's say it's supposed to flow at 1,000 gallons per minute. Well, in the performance requirements, you want to know a variable so that when your facilities group is monitoring that pump, if it fluctuates, what is the fluctuation allowed? Is it plus or minus 5%? What happens if it goes over? What should you look at? You can put that information in here. If it goes under it, what should you be concerned about, or what should you be looking at? So you're tracking throughout the entire process of life cycle how your materials should be functioning, how your assembly should be functioning, and when you should be looking at possibly replacing parts or replacing the entire assembly. And it's not duplicating O&M materials, because an O&M on that instance is operations and maintenance manuals, because that basically just tells you how to maintain and run the stuff. It doesn't tell you how it was designed.
So value engineering is a frustration for many on the project team. Cost control can happen throughout each phase through the documented decision-making process. What are the strategies for cost control?
Yeah, we'll show you in a little bit with the software, but we have a place for alternative notations. And what we recommend is identifying the main component, the main assembly, making sure that that fits within your budget for purchasing, but also making sure it fits within your budget for maintenance and operations. If it doesn't, then you can identify some alternatives and price those out along the same lines to make certain that the overall performance and operability of the building is within your cost and benefits.
From estimating to operations, information can be added, reviewed, extracted at any point in time to be audited for accuracy. Steve, can you provide some more perspective on how this method of documenting supports all stakeholders?
Yeah, basically what we're trying to do is a single source of information that is accessible to everyone, particularly owners, that they can keep records of the management of the concept, design, construction, and operation of the facility throughout. And this single source of information, working with O&M manuals and the teams operating the building, will help you maintain complete and accurate records of what went into, what was purchased, what went in, and how often it was maintained. You can transfer some of this information to your maintenance records. You can keep it in there if you'd like, or it will supplement other information. Similarly, by keeping the same nomenclature we used earlier on with a numbering system.
Risk management is always critical and one of the biggest parts in a project for all stakeholders. Collaboration, transparency, and decision management are known practices to help reduce risk. Steve, what practices aid in managing risk?
So if everyone's participating in the project, your risk is naturally reduced. And what we encourage with our software is communication between all stakeholders. Here's an example of the chilled water pump. and how Dave was coordinating with Ray and asking questions and making comments back and forth to make this document as accurate as possible. I'm gonna digress just a little bit and give you an example of a project that I actually did. It was for a multi-story 17 hospital patient tower. And that hospital patient tower had a very complex curtain wall system. And as a result, the architect and owner hired a facility or a facade consultant, facade enclosure consultant. The design builder hired their sub consultant early on. They in turn hired their curtain wall manufacturer. And we also had the mechanical engineer, structural engineer, a quality control person from the architect, and the project manager from the owner involved. And by going through this process, it took us a little longer to write a singular spec section. But when we did that section, and in the end, what we ended up with was a curtain wall that is finished, and there were no change orders and no RFIs on that curtain wall system because everyone participated in the design, and before anything was purchased, everyone bought off on it. So that's one example of how we can mitigate risk.
Regulatory compliance. How does documentation address this particular part?
Well, when Tina and I were putting this together yesterday afternoon, Tina asked me this question, and I just simply said, well, the whole document's regulatory compliance, because you have to comply with all the regulations for building and construction. So what we're doing is documenting how we're in compliance with everything from the very beginning, and it will also aid you in showing compliance throughout the life cycle of the building. For instance, you have noted that let's use fire doors in a hospital, for example. Fire doors need to be inspected once a year. So you've got a record of all the fire doors, you've got a record of the requirement for being inspected, and you can then tailor that to your maintenance records of were those inspected this year? No, they weren't. Okay, we got to get them inspected. The year's almost up. Or we're rapidly approaching that deadline. Let's get those inspections done. So that's how we comply with regulations.
So these next two slides will wrap this up and put a bow on how UNIFORMAT is the ideal support of documenting and managing assets for the entire team, specifically benefiting the owner and the end user, who is the operations and management. Conspectus approaches a project from a different perspective that documents decisions early and allows the content to evolve throughout. Steve, can you provide more insight to our evolving specifications?
Certainly. You'll see the traditional approach is broken down into silos. We have concept design, schematic design, DD, CD, construction, and operations. And you'll see that concept is pretty much ignored, and operations is pretty much ignored by the traditional approach. And then you also have these breaks in the gap. And usually what happens in these breaks in the gap is when somebody finally gets to estimating the project. And what happens then is you notice that there are some over expenditures, and you need to revise the design a little bit, bring it back into compliance with what the concept was. And it happens in these various stages. What we're proposing is that if everyone is involved from the very beginning, and by everyone, cost estimating is a key component of this as well. I've been primarily talking about facilities management and operations, but cost estimating and having continual estimation as you make decisions is key to not going over budget and giving you what you want as an owner. And so what we're trying to do is minimize, or actually really eliminate, these gaps that occur naturally in the process.
Okay, so
And
here's,
no,
sorry.
go for it.
I was just gonna say, here's the bow on top, the OPR, the owner's project requirements, validation, and feedback loop. So Steve, take us through this flow chart and tie it all up together for us.
Yeah, what we're showing here is the owner project requirements. Basically, it's the beginning document, right? So from the very beginning, the owner's the one that is going to be outlaying all the risk and the money for the project. What we want to do is maximize dollars spent and minimize risk involved. So by using the UNIFORMAT solution, we're testing it against everything as we go along. So as we get into some preliminary documentation. We look at the OPR and we do the estimation. Does it pass? Well, then we move on. If it fails, then we've got to go back and tell the owner, hey, we're not meeting your cost because, and you can clearly identify the because. For instance, the pump that we talked about cost more money than we thought, but it's going to last this much longer. Do you wish to proceed? And by asking that question, we're getting informed consent. We're saying, hey, it's going to cost a little bit more, but it's going to last a little bit longer, or it's going to perform this much better for you. At that point in time, they can make a decision that, no, I have to stick with that budget. So then at that point, we come back and we go back and find something else to fit that. Or if they say, yeah, we're good with that added expenditure to increase the budget of the project to get that better material, then we move into the next phase of the specification. We will take that preliminary documentation, turn it into master format documentation. And that's something we didn't ask. Is everyone familiar with the master format documentation? You want to raise your virtual hands? There's 6 digits. Okay. All right. A couple of you. That's good. Yeah, so then we transfer into the master format component of it, and that becomes the specification that can be used for bidding and construction. But as you come in with your bids, you do the same thing. You can measure it against the OPR, and then you see what the bids and the costs are going to be. Again, if you fail that, go back to the informing the owner, do they want to accept the higher costs, or do we need to go back and take a look at what we can clearly identify as the overruns and make modifications to that? If it's okay and everything moves forward, then we go ahead and build the building, and everything goes smoothly, hopefully. And then you have commissioning after the building's done. Same thing. If you test it, commissioning, and it fails, you come back up here. Why did it fail? What failed? Is it acceptable or is it not acceptable? Does it need to get repaired? And then you go back. If you pass it, go and operate your building, and you get your life cycle going again. So that's basically how we're looking at the process. So at this point, I think, are there any questions? I should have been asking that all along, and I apologize. But if there are any questions before we jump into something else. Okay. So I've either put you all to sleep or done a really good job. I'll go with really good job. I'm going to turn it over to Ted for just a minute now. Ted Kenny is our Director of Sales, and he is going to walk through a demonstration of Conspectus Cloud for you.
Great. So thank you very much, Steve. We'll focus on SPD today, but I'll kind of give some high-level talking points to Conspectus Cloud as well. So I'll share my screen here. Can everyone see my screen all right?
Yes.
Excellent. So this is Conspectus Cloud. The first kind of key piece to understand about Conspectus Cloud is that it's created by specifiers, architects, engineers for specifiers, architects, and engineers. We're the only software solution in the industry that was really developed by a team of specifiers. Our team's using it every day to deliver project specifications. The other key piece to understand about Conspectus Cloud is our licensing structure. So I know we've been talking a lot this morning or this afternoon about how to enable collaboration between all of the different stakeholders within a project. With Conspectus Cloud, our license structure is not based on a seat by seat basis or a grouping of seats assigned to a specific department. The nice thing about Conspectus Cloud is we license on a universal basis. So that means that you can add in as many people as you'd like, whenever you'd like, from both inside and outside your firm. So the whole goal is to bring in all of these project stakeholders, like Steve mentioned, early on in the process, especially if you're using our UNIFORMAT documents, and have that collaboration occur through our commenting system, which I know we have a screenshot of. I'll show you how that works in a moment. Keep in mind, if you're developing specifications like traditionally in master format, you can always do that in Conspectus Cloud. UNIFORMAT that we'll be focusing on today is not a necessary part of the system, but it is something that we very much encourage folks to adopt because there's a ton of benefits which we've been discussing today. It's something where we see a lot of folks come on board with Conspectus Cloud, And then 6 to 8 months in, they start experimenting with SPD on individual projects, testing it out, and typically it's very, very successful.
Ted,
So when
before you move on,
Yeah.
there on the UNIFORMAT front, we prefer to have the UNIFORMAT, as I was describing it, and I should have told you this earlier, is it's an additive process. Say what you know when you know it. It's not a deductive process like master format and specifications. So what we're encouraging is make your decisions, say it, stick with it, unless you need to modify it for some other reason.
And we'll also show you how that additive process then ties over to building out your specifications. So by the time you get to DD, you have a fully built out spec with all the sections that you're going to need for that project, and that they're all based on that UNIFORMAT document that you've developed over time. We have a linking process between the two of those, and I'll demonstrate that as well. So when you first log into Conspectus Cloud, this is what you see. Today, I'm going to go directly into our Maker's Mansion kind of demo test project, so you can see some built-out specifications. So we'll just click right into this project. And as you can see here up at the top, this is where your UNIFORMAT sections live. Down here at the bottom, this is where all of your master format sections for your project live. One kind of key piece that I know I love and a lot of our team loves are these blue bars. They're all filterable. So if you want to see, okay, when was the last time someone was working in a UNIFORMAT section, you can just hit last activity and it'll filter, and all of these kind of work in the same exact way. So we'll start with the actual SPD checklist, or our UNIFORMAT checklist for adding specifications into a project. So you can kind of see that additive approach that Steve mentioned. So we'll go up here to our SPD checklist. This is where you'll be adding these documents in. This lives universally at the top of the page for every project that you're working on in Conspectus Cloud. So we'll go in SPD, and this is filled out, right? Because this is a demo account. We have most of these sections turned on, but you'll see these individual sections as we described from UNIFORMAT. And the nice part about this system is that say I'm going to be adding substructure and I want to drill down and I'm going to have floor construction. If these were all not marked and I selected floor construction, it would select all the way up the chain for you. So really, simple and easy process to start adding in your UNIFORMAT. Again, this is the checklist that you're adding in elements, what you know, when you know them. And I think what we'll do is maybe just go directly into a section, and perhaps we'll use the section that we were using today and screenshotting so you can see what that looks like. So we'll go into D services here. Some of this is built out, some of it is not, and I'll scroll down just so you can see the kind of built out version that Steve was talking to. So this is the chilled water system that we had referenced in the presentation today. As you can see, we're going through adding in these individual elements, and we'll get down here to the linking in a moment, but I'd like to at least show that as you're going through a UNIFORMAT document and you're starting to add each one of these, if you go to this drop down, so if I were to select services here, right, I can just add in an initial description, and then the individual selections that I've made via the checklist will be populated here for you. And when you click on them, you'll see we have your standard level 4 elements built out. So I can go in and add in, general construction items, passenger elevators, freight elevators, wheelchair lift, other elevators. So each one of these are already pre-built into the system for you to be able to utilize. So it kind of acts as a guidepost for you to be able to add in the individual sections that you want to then start populating.
And those are based on the ASTM UNIFORMAT for this element in particular.
Mm-hmm. So moving down here, I'll just see if I can find one that's already populated here. So when we get underneath these, I'm just seeing this here. So you'll see here, like again, you have all of these different sections here populated for you to be able to go in and select. So a couple of key points here. One, you'll see that we have a table. Might not be used to having tables and specifications. I hear every day, some people use them, some people don't. One nice element of Conspectus Cloud that is definitely kind of differentiates us from some of the other software out there. You can put tables directly into any spec, whether it be UNIFORMAT or MASTERFORMAT in Conspectus Cloud. You can manipulate that table kind of traditionally as you would in Word, however you'd like it to be. So very convenient and easy. And you'll also see we have the image that we had displayed in the slide deck today. You can add in images into Conspectus Cloud as well. Over here on the right, this was the commenting that we were discussing and we showed in the slide as well. Very simple and easy to add in comments into Conspectus Cloud. So I'll use this commenting button here and I can tag Steve. Hopefully, Steve, you're out of this project. Yep, you are. I'll just add in a question mark and you can see that Steve can come in and reply to this. And the nice part about this is for everyone that you're asking questions of from your project team, you can see if they've seen it. And you can always re-comment if they haven't replied yet. So it allows you to be able to work in real time, comment back and forth in real time. As you can see, Steve's already replied. But the nice aspect of this too is it really just kind of provides complete transparency for the whole team, allows you to keep track of who's seen the comments as we go. So you'll see, we populate these with our children headings here. So these are all built in as well. You'll see it populates this drop-down menu here. So you have your description, basis of design, performance requirement, design requirements, references, components, alternatives, and history. And this is a key piece that we actually added in. It's not part of what CSI defines as PPD or in UNIFORMAT. We added this in because it's just a really useful tool to be able to track the history as you're going through and making changes. You can add those dates and document them. So everyone kind of has, again, that is like a guidepost of this is what happened, this is when it changed and why.
The other important thing about that history is also because some facilities are taking years and years, if not decades or longer to build, you can track decisions made and not have to revisit them if somebody were to leave one or two of the stakeholders, and then you're not revisiting information again. So you're not duplicating work.
I'll go out. Maybe we'll try one other section so I can show you just another one that's a little bit more built out as well. So we'll go into B shell here. So you'll see here, this is kind of one that's a work in progress. Again, this is a demo account, so you're probably seeing a lot of, random comments and information here, but this is kind of one that's, hasn't been fully built out, but is in progress. So you can take a look and see what that looks like. The nice part about our system is for the specifiers on the call today, when you get down to a components level, say for our structural frame concrete here, right? We know we're going to have concrete. We know we're going to have precast concrete. As you're listing out these components, as you're going through this process, you can link these over to your specification sections. You could use this linking button up here. And then essentially when I link this, if I were to add this in, it's obviously already applied. The nice part about this is that it will actually add that section into your master format specification. So again, by the time you get to DD, you've kind of prepped yourself for success and you have a fully built out spec ready for you to edit based off of all of the learnings that you've done throughout the UNIFORMAT documentation process.
Ted, while we're going through this, go back up just a minute, or actually right there at structural frame, right below it. You see the B1010.10b or SF-1. This is where I mentioned earlier about the BIM integration or BIM working with the BIM. This is where if you had a close relationship with the Revit modeler, you could put in that dot number could be the assembly code for the model itself. So then you'd have a direct one-to-one relationship between the UNIFORMAT document and the drawings. And I think you might be touching on it in a minute, but when you make the link with the components to master format, then that number and that whatever words you put in there under principal products, so 033000 concrete, could become a keynote on the drawings themselves. So just wanted to put that out there because we talked about integration earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you'll see also, so we have replaced probably what your standard used to seeing within master format, which a section includes and related requirements. We typically replace these at Conspectus with work results and principal products. And the whole goal of this is to populate this information directly from your UNIFORMAT or systems performance description document. So I'm going to use this nifty tool over here on the right-hand side. This drop-down allows me to go to final view, which essentially allows me to see exactly what this spec would look like if I were to export it out today. And you'll see what happens is it actually pulls over a lot of this information directly from UNIFORMAT. And oh, by the way, we have an image here that's being pulled over from UNIFORMAT too. And essentially what we're saying with work results and principal products is, hey, Mr. Contractor, this is what you're going to be building, and this is what you're going to be building it with. And this is all going to be described in this section. So really great integration tool here. Again, you can continue to develop in MASTERFORMAT, but we really like to think that this is a innovative approach to using UNIFORMAT to document much earlier in the process, and again, set yourself up for success when you do start writing the MASTERFORMAT documents. Any questions so far on what I've shown? Hopefully I'm not putting folks to sleep as well.
It is lunchtime.
Yeah. So I did want to just show a couple other quick highlights from Conspectus Cloud. If any of you would like a full demonstration of the platform or a trial account, would be more than happy to connect with you directly. I believe Tina will be sharing my information after this, so feel free to reach out. We're more than happy to walk you through the platform end to end, and then provide a free trial so you can get in there and poke around and test it out. You'll see within a MASTERFORMAT document, one thing that we've done that's not traditional are these checkboxes here. And essentially what we've done is we've replaced the square and angle brackets that you would traditionally see in a MASTERFORMAT spec with our choice groups. And essentially a choice group allows you to just simply make a selection. And then when I move out of that selection, it will automatically resolve. And this is a decision that's just been made and set in stone in the project. One other kind of nifty feature that I'll show before we run out of time here, as you're going through on the UNIFORMAT side of things or on the MASTERFORMAT side of things, as you're going, you always have an audit trail of everything that's occurring within every document in Conspectus Cloud. So I can go to our SPD category here. This is our dropdown. We drop down to our audit trail. The nice part about this is if maybe someone comes in and makes a change and you're like, hey, who changed this? When did they change it? Why did they change it? You can go to your audit trail and see every single change that's been made in this document, for the entire history of this document. So like Steve said, over time, you have a project that takes 5 years, you're going to want to be able to go back and reference things as they change. So this gives you a full audit trail of every user action that's been taken in this document. We do have an audit trail universally for the entire project, so you can see both UNIFORMAT and MASTERFORMAT, and really any action taken within a project, you have a full audit trail of that as well. Another piece of that is that if you are adding in people from outside your firm, right? I hear this all the time. Hey, I would never want to add in my owner to a spec. I don't want them poking around and changing things. This gives you kind of full control over being able to understand everything that goes on within these documents. And keep in mind too, when you're adding folks in at a project level, you do have controls over what they can and can't do. So we have different levels. A viewer can just view. You can add someone in as a viewer and commenter, so they can view the specs, comment on the specs, but they can't actually edit. And then we have higher level controls where you can edit, add documents, and even add and remove people. One other kind of key feature, if you wanted to track this document without just using the audit trail, right, just seeing each individual line, maybe you wanted to see a comparison between different versions of the document. We have a really nifty feature for that I know our specifiers love, which we call issues and releases. And essentially an issue, the way you can think about it is it's the entirety of that spec at that moment in time. You're taking a snapshot of it, and it's saving it here as essentially like a file that you can then go in and access. Our releases are for things like addenda, where you're just packaging together a group of specs and you want to release that out. The nice part about using these two features for your deliverables as opposed to exporting out of the system every time just in full, is that it actually saves the files here. You can download them right out, and pass them on as your deliverable, but it saves a record of it that then you can compare to earlier versions of the spec. So say I wanted to compare maybe, issue 2 to issue 5 here. And this will show, at a high level, okay, we had nothing and now we've added in a lot. But the nice part about this system is that you can actually go a little bit more granular than just this high-level view of all the sections that have been included and added to the project. We can go into, say, substructure here, and we can see side-by-side comparison of what's changed on the document, right? So really nice feature here, again, to be able to track what, how has this document changed over time? What changes have we made and decisions that we've made, and then be able to reference why we made those decisions via the comment dialogue that goes on the side here. So as we scroll down, you can see, we've added in, looks like we were adding in a keynote description there. We've changed these sections. We've added in this link here. So again, just a really great way to be able to track these things. And I know Steve will likely mention this is very useful for estimators. So, you want to be able to help them, guide them on, and show them, hey, this is what's changed in this section. As long as they're added to Conspectus Cloud, the beauty of really any window in Conspectus Cloud is you can just snip this URL, send it to them via, a Teams or Slack channel or via email, and it'll take them directly back to this window.
Yeah, Ted, you're right. And one other thing that we didn't mention was that A1010 dot whatever number, some estimating softwares tie in directly with UNIFORMAT as well, because UNIFORMAT was developed initially in the early 90s specifically for estimating. We've just found other uses for it since then.
I think that kind of concludes just a general high-level teaser here. I don't want to show all of Conspectus Cloud. I would encourage you to sign up for a demonstration so we can do that. But maybe for now we can open it up to questions.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions, please don't hesitate.
Or comments too. We'd love to hear any feedback that you might have.
I think everybody might be getting ready for the holidays.
If you think of anything, though, our emails, Ted and I's emails are on there. Please feel free to email us questions.
Oh, Brian has a question.
Yeah.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I was just curious. I'm not real familiar with your group. Could you give just an overview of sort of your company, what services you provide?
Sure. Primarily, Conspectus started off as a specification writing service. We're an independent specification consultant. So we started off writing master format specifications for architects and engineers. Over the course of time, Dave Stutzman, the founder, started developing his own software because what was available in the industry really didn't fit our needs as a group. And that's why we say we're software developed by specifiers for specifiers, because we've built in all the features that we want to see in a software as a specification consultant.
Also, just add to that too, keep in mind with Conspectus Cloud, we have our own master specifications library that we make available via Conspectus Cloud as well. So, similar to your master spec of the world, we have a full master specification guide that's available to you to be able to use on your projects if you become a user of Conspectus Cloud.
Yeah, I was curious if you did any work with federal projects. I'm an employee of GSA, so I know there's special permissions and things like that whenever we're working with cloud software.
Yeah,
Have you
and
gone through that process?
yes, and I'm going to put Elias on the spot here. Elias is one of our other executive vice presidents, and he's been here a year or two longer than me. And I haven't worked on any federal work at the point, but I believe he has. So can you address that, Elias?
Well, I know that we've been, as far as the requirements for federal use, that we are getting FedRAMP certified, or the system the backbone system that Microsoft uses. It's an Azure server, is FedRAMP. So if that's the concern, we would be able to be used by a government entity that way.
But as far as past work, though, I believe we have worked on federal projects, and for a while there, I know Dave and the group, we're doing we're actually writing the VA specifications, and was involved with specs and TACT.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just add on to that, Brian. We have been evaluated by another federal organization, and looking at our cloud infrastructure, they were really pleased. I mean, we basically passed with flying colors because all of the servers that Conspectus Cloud is hosted on are hosted at the highest levels at Microsoft Azure, that are all in line with the highest levels of compliance with FedRAMP. We have one server that we store a very minimal amount of data. It's just the commenting data within Conspectus Cloud. It's called Elastic Cloud. That's at the second highest level of FedRAMP compliance. So yeah, they were very pleased with that, and we were able to get through kind of the next round of evaluations with that organization.
And we're actually going through another round of annual security check. How do you want to say it? The checkup. Basically, our developers are helping us with a security assessment of our software, make sure it's still top notch.
Yep, security assessment review and stress test. And I'll also add, Brian, too, we do provide for organizations that work with federal institutions. We can also do this for really any firm that works with us and uses Conspectus Cloud. Oftentimes firms will come and say, hey, we have an NDA with a specific government organization where our general user base can't have access to the projects that we're doing there. Because Conspectus Cloud, again, has an open-ended licensing system, if you have a firm user who basically has access to the system, they can see most projects that are in there. So we're more than happy to create a completely separate account just for staff that are, under NDA to be able to work in, and there's no additional cost to that. So, we're always happy to oblige there to try and support the levels of security that you have to meet.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'll say one last thing. I was used to master spec format, and we recently got involved with the building assessment tool analysis, which is really for our portfolio team to gather sort of big picture information about aspects of a building that are in need of repair and so forth. That tool uses UNIFORMAT. So I was reintroduced to UNIFORMAT after never really using it on the professional side. So it's interesting to hear that you guys have navigated towards UNIFORMAT as well.
Yeah, it works well with, like I said, estimating software. If in the grand scheme of things, if we could all come together and play nice in the sandbox together, all Revit assemblies, all cost estimating, and all specifications would be done with UNIFORMAT, all using the same numbers and same names. Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, sounds great.
Any other questions?
All right,
Okay.
so this will be posted to our YouTube channel where you can also find other webinars on other topics, and you will receive an email with a link to our YouTube channel. So thank you so much for attending, and have a wonderful, wonderful holiday and New Year.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.